You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Can we create a world where the systems that fail us are reimagined to support us? Stay tuned for a profound exploration of becoming an embodied change maker. This episode contains adult subject matter, and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore the powerful journey of learning to embrace ourselves through life's toughest changes. Emily Wright Mitchell is a Texas-raised mother and wife who spreads her passion for health and fitness to women in her community and online. An expert in health and nutrition as a nutritional therapy practitioner, Emily's passion comes from years of struggles with both weight and mental health issues. Today, Emily uses both her personal experience and her professional knowledge to guide women in becoming the best version of themselves, teaching them to understand the foundations of health and take back their lives. Here is my interview with Emily Mitchell. Hi, Emily. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because embracing yourself on the road to change is a massive topic that I feel every one of us faces in our lives at some point over some challenge that we need to deal with. So thank you for being here today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It is my first one and it is a privilege and an honor. I'm excited.
We were just talking about that before we started recording, and I am just so humbled that this is your very first podcast to guest on and that you have chosen me. Thank you so much for that, and I really hope I can do justice to what we'll be talking about today and what your passion is. For starters, Emily, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and maybe some parts of your journey or your story that connect up with what you do today, and share with our listeners what it is that you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Emily Mitchell and I am from Texas. I'm currently living in the Houston area, but I grew up in a place called Corpus Christi, which was on the coast. Like many others, as far as it relates to nutrition and fitness, because that's what I do now. I'm a fitness coach, nutrition and fitness lifestyle coach. We work a lot on mental health. There wasn't a lot of education back then for the things that we put in our body, how that affected our gut and then therefore affected our hormones and just our ultimate mood in general, namely when we're focusing on mental health. I wrote a book called Better Than Before. My website's Better Than Emily because I want you to do it better than me. But anyways, I talk a lot about the 90s diet, which was like the back of the soup, Campbell's soup recipes. And I think there was Kellogg's, eat 2 bowls of Kellogg's one day and then 1 Sensible Meal, Slim Fast. And when you really look at this, a lot of that was heavily processed foods, and we weren't getting a lot of fruits and vegetables and the protein and the essential fats that we need to not only function properly, but to regulate our own hormone health. Very early on, I was doing working out and eating the same and nothing was changing for me. And this led to a lot of yo-yo dieting, but I had no idea how it would lead into my own mental health, anxiety. And I would say I would experience like bouts of sadness, not too much depression, but a lot of anxiety, a lot of negative talk, a lot of negative loops running. This didn't become an issue that I could no longer ignore until I started having babies. And a couple things happened. I was super sick with my first child, so I was no longer even moving at all anymore. And then I was just trying to eat what I could. And I did that for about 2 years, where I like to call it when you're feeling that sick and then the baby comes and it's a difficult season and your hormones are changing. I was just surviving for about 2 years with hardly taking care of myself. And then I just hit a wall, probably with my second son. That's when I got diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety, prenatal at that point, because I had my kids back to back. And realized I had a psychiatrist tell me that this is not just something that you wait for it to pass. You're going to have to help it. And I knew what that meant. You're going to have to put systems and structures into your life to change the narrative, because it's very easy to continue what you're doing and you're not going to feel motivated to do anything different. That was a turning point for me. I had these two babies now, and I wanted to show up for them. I wanted to have the energy for them. I didn't want to always feel like this wasn't something I could be doing. I'm not saying that every moment has to be amazing. There's lots of boredom in life, but I wanted, for the most part, to want my life. That is where I started to change. I lost 80 pounds. I started with the nutrition and the fitness for me. I felt that is the one thing I can take control of to change. So I started there and I lost 80 pounds and I started feeling better and I started doing better. And then I just got to this place where I had never looked and felt as good ever, even in high school, than I did then. And I think that is the reason that I wrote this book. And that is the reason why I'm so passionate about at least getting my story out there. It's what it does for you mentally on the inside. You could lose 20 pounds and still not be happy. But it was the person I became through the process and realizing that I showed up for myself. I learned the skills that it took to show up for myself. I pushed through barriers I never thought I could get to the other side of. And that changed me on the inside. It was like, if I can do this here, how can I show up like this in every area of my life? Who could I become that I never thought was possible? And that is ultimately hope. And I think hope is the driving force, no matter where you're at or what you're going through, that brings us back to life.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey and sharing some of the challenges that you faced and how that impacted you. And I just want to say that I have a feeling that postpartum in particular remains very severely underdiagnosed, and many women don't even know that they're going through it. And sometimes it can take even a long time after you have a child for that to still affect you. Can you share a little bit about maybe what that felt like for you to go through that, so we can let our listeners know a little bit of the mental, physical, and emotional impacts that this journey had on you? And also, there's a lot of, like you said, hormones involved that are also playing on top of all of that. What was that particular journey like for you?
I think the best way to describe this, I was listening to, if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson, I'm sure you are. I was listening to his podcast and he said something that like hit the nail on the head for me. He summed it up in a really beautiful way. And it was, people can go through a lot of things and be resilient and make it to the other side. That is not what causes us post-traumatic stress. That's not necessarily what causes us trauma. It is the surprise of the unexpected that changes us. Maybe you didn't expect the betrayal. Maybe you didn't expect to not be able to figure this out on your own. Whatever it is, we all go through different traumas. For me, I would say that's exactly what it was for me. Like the depths of the depression, the experience of that postpartum depression, like you said, is largely understudied. People weren't talking about it. I was surprised. It was a life-altering event for me, and it was completely unexpected, especially in the way that they portray pregnancy and bringing a child into this world as being beautiful, which it is. But when you don't feel that way, it is very shocking. I initially believed depression was a choice and something that was only tied to severe trauma, and that sadness was more likely what we all deal with as humans. And I should be able to figure out how to pull myself out of that emotional space. I was surprised that it wasn't changing or shifting for me. A lot of my symptoms were also shocking. I had severe anxiety and paranoia. I had insomnia, at times emotional numbness. I couldn't even answer the phone and people that I once loved to talk to. And I knew they were checking in and I wanted that less. It was a loss of self and it grew very overwhelmingly unmanageable. I think that the hormonal changes, particularly with postpartum, was a major trigger. It's something I didn't understand before. And I had never correlated the fact that depression wasn't just emotional, it's biological and systematic. I know that now, and that takes the guilt and shame off of it. It's not totally your fault. It is something biologically happening inside of you, and your capacity is just less than somebody who's in a healthy state, if that makes sense. I came to recognize how diet and lack of movement and poor sleep habits were making the situation worse. I really had no idea how long you have been operating that way also plays into the severity of postpartum depression. You're likely going to, the way that you treat your body and the way that you take care of yourself, if it is on the lower end of what it takes to take care of ourselves, you're probably going to struggle with it more. I didn't understand that. I feel like overall, and in this book, and hopefully what I can get across to people, is the experience led to deep insight. Mental health it's not just a matter of willpower, but it's biology, environment, lifestyle, and past conditioning.
Yeah, beautifully explained. And thank you for letting us have a peek at that experience that you went through. And you're touching something that I deal with a lot because a lot of my clients also struggle with this sense, where does mental health really fit into our lives? Is this a choice? Is this willpower? So mental health is one of these really tricky things that feels complex, and yet it can lead to these places that you described where all of a sudden we learn about ourselves. And a lot of the times when we really dive into these darker pieces of ourselves and the difficult pieces, there comes a realization that we get reconnected with our own intuition and our own confidence. And as you said, our identity sometimes just gets washed away through this whole process and we have to find it again. Thank you for sharing what that was like for you. And I'm also curious about how you became motivated in a sense that you wanted to make that change, that you wanted to change your diet, your lifestyle, that you wanted to move, because I feel like that is one of the most difficult pieces when you are struggling with your mental health, is to have the motivation for something to change and to make even a little effort. It can just feel impossible. Where did that motivation for you come from and how did you sustain that?
Yeah, and that is an excellent question. And it's one that I still ponder because you get into different seasons of your life and you start to recognize when you're overwhelmed or maybe you're experiencing more sadness due to situations outside of your control. I think that is the hardest piece that people struggle with the most, because I know what it feels like to feel like I can't do anything today. I can't show up and much less get excited about change. I would say for me, I was scared. I was afraid of what I was feeling and now had a lot of people depending on me. I think people who struggle with mental health are in a dark night of the soul. I think we're very aware of how we're showing up, and that makes you experience a lot more guilt and shame. I did a lot of like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this differently? Everybody else seems really excited about life. I almost want to say that makes you more depressed, and it is not rooted in truth. Nobody's life is as good as it seems or as put together as it seems. And that's something that I have to tell myself pretty frequently now because I know it's not true. But I had this moment, they talk a lot about getting connected to like your biggest, most compelling reason why. Not the reason why you think you should do something, or not the reason that it seems impressive or what somebody else is doing. I'm talking about that true moment where you connect to, all right, this road is about to go one of two ways. What matters to you most that you want it to go in the other direction? Because I call it like, if you think about it, it's like turning the Titanic around. And speaking, if you want to take this all the way to biology and the laws of physics, an object in motion will stay in motion. And in order for it to go into a different direction, you're going to have to apply equal amount of force and you're going to experience a lot of resistance, right? But the only way to get going in another direction is to go through that transition. And then when you start going in that direction, it gets a little bit easier. For example, how do we do this in our lives? For me, I'll never forget, I was with my mom, I was emotional and I was crying in tears. And it was just like this moment, like my kids deserve a mom who wants to be here. And I just started playing all the scenarios of if I didn't change, what that might look like for them and how that cycle might repeat years later down the line. And for me, that scared the shit out of me. Pardon me if I just cussed. And I told my mom, I was like, I am going to change my whole life. And she was like, that's great. What are you going to do? And I was like, I have no idea. But it was just like this moment where I connected with my, like the why, the one why that scares the crap out of you. Like, I was going to do it. To be honest with you, I lacked the skills and the resources to be able to change my life. So I had to recruit help. I had to, okay, so if I want to eat better, who knows how to do that? And how can I find them? If I want to move, who can help me do that in a really structured way? And how do I find them? And I just slowly started adding in at least some accountability in my life to where they were telling me a different story. They were believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, so that I could just start putting like one foot in front of the other in a different direction. And I didn't trust myself, right? Because I had never lost this amount of weight before. I never changed my life like this before. I didn't really have the luxury, like you're staring 80 pounds down, like you don't really have the luxury to think that this is going to be quick. I also had just had a baby, so I was put in a position where I had to go slow. You can't change everything all at once. That's going to exhaust you. And nor did I have the time because I had these two kids to take care of. There were days I didn't feel like working out or the baby had woke up from their nap, but I knew that I just had to do something. Even if I just walked for 10 minutes that day, that was a notch on my belt that I showed up. That was like proof to myself that like I'm not doing what I'd always done, which is give up. And that mattered to me a lot. I didn't actually care if those 10 minutes were super effective in building muscle or not. I didn't. I just knew that like it is so easy to stop. And I just decided that I wasn't going to this time.
Yeah, you touch on something really important there. And that is finding your people, finding your tribe, your support. And that can be extremely difficult when you're struggling with your mental health as well. As you said before, you sometimes wouldn't answer the phone because it was just too difficult to talk to someone. I find that the community aspect is something that can be really helpful, but you have to get over that hump of wanting to isolate when you're struggling. And that can be such a difficult piece as well. Were you in a situation where you had a support network, or was that something difficult that you had to build and you had to find?
That's a really good question. Yes and no. I had the support of my family, but I don't think I wanted it. I think, like you're saying, like I needed to talk to somebody who had either been through this, had been through something like it, and had the exact skills that I needed to change my life. And I also needed to see that it was doable from somebody else. And I think to your point, yeah, I was looking for a new environment, a new community. When you talk about making these kinds of change, that often comes with like friendships that no longer serve you because you tend to attract what you are. We all know that. What do they say? You are the top 5 people that you hang out with. So you better like who you're hanging out with. That isn't always the case, right? You're just like, okay, I have been keeping some people around that are not so great for me. So yeah, I think that initially I was going to change no matter what, but what kept me and what keeps me and had me turn into a completely different identity was the community that I was in. Because they'll do things like okay, nobody knows what's going on in your head, right? And if you don't tell somebody the things that are going on in your head, there is no opportunity for somebody to say, hey, that's not true. And then you can adopt maybe like a new positive loop going through your mind of like, hey, like you're worth it. I know you maybe thought that you're not and nobody wants to be around you, but that's a lie. And I think that's what community is so important, and working in teams of people that you love, because somebody can be like, hey, this is what you're thinking like about yourself and how you relate to the world. It's not true. It's better than that. That was hugely important for me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I feel a lot of the things that happen in our heads, also the feelings of guilt and shame that you were mentioning around motherhood, about functioning or how we should appear or feel. Those are huge challenges that come up in a lot of mental health journeys. And in our heads, that all sounds like that's the truth. And we need to isolate because nobody wants to talk to us. Nobody wants to see us in this state. And we're bad sisters, mothers, and siblings or friends because of that. Very important point that you were touching on there with the community. Now, you followed that journey that you went through and became a coach for all of this. So, where do you start with your clients when they reach out or when they connect and they may be in similar situations themselves? Where do you start with that?
That's a great question. I typically start with their belief system. I tell people that really ultimately, when it comes down to it, because clients come to me to lose weight and they're new moms or they're going through menopause, all walks of life. It doesn't necessarily have to be postpartum for you, but I do feel like you're saying, as women, at some point along the journey, we get to this place where we have to face ourselves and the things that we believe and the things that we've been told, because they create habits and your habits no longer serve you. Some do, and some need to be reevaluated. There's a huge mental aspect in working with people in nutrition and fitness, which some people are just like shocked to find that out because they're like, it's just about losing the weight. It's about why you put the weight on. And that's different for everybody. Are we using food to cope? Are we embarrassed of where we're at and we don't want to ask for help? Do we have this perfectionistic mentality where everything has to be perfect or it's no longer working? And then when you get so close to the brink and you pull back right when you're about to have a breakthrough, do we not believe we're worth enough? To your point right there, just there's this self-sacrificing aspect that is put on women in general. And then when you become a mom, I like to call it the pregnancy princess and the postpartum peasant. It's like once the baby is out of you, it is just all about that child. And I had heard in a quote, and I think it was like a Girl Wash Your Facebook, where she was like, you were somebody before you were somebody's mom, and that person still matters. And I can't remember a thing about that book, but I tell myself that all the time, because who you are and what you want and how you view yourself and what you believe about yourself, it's like an air conditioned system, right? If any part of that is not clean air, it's going to affect the whole system. If you don't believe and you have super low self-worth over here, and think of it like a triangle, and here's your career and here's your nutrition, all of that is going to interplay with each other in a very negative way. And typically for women, I can't speak for men, but typically for women, the first to go is the way that we take care of ourselves and the promises that we keep to ourselves. So when I start with a client, I don't expect them to see this or want any of this. This is like a process. Like I was saying, my initial why was my children. But what changed in me is the realization, it sounds so cliche because it's true, but if I don't take care of myself, I literally cannot take care of anybody else. You just can't do it. Not in the way that you want to. It's going to have some sort of, the filtration is not clean. What we do is we clear up some of those loops. We close them out in the mind and we create new positive loops. And they call it neuroplasticity. They do that the same way with a stroke patient. You are just trying to create new channels in which your body can now learn how to move again, or emotionally learn how to think and feel in a different way, because your thoughts become actions and your actions become habits. And that's the biggest thing I try to tell my clients is like, make sense how you got here. honor the person that's been trying so hard to get to where you are and take that pressure off your shoulders and just realize that some things just aren't serving us anymore. There's nothing wrong with you. We can get to a better place.
Yeah, that's really profound and very empowering. I think once you understand that, how do we deal with that fear, Emily, that comes up when we know something needs to change, but we don't know how or where this is going to happen? We might feel like we lose ourselves in the process, or we might get ridiculed or shamed for wanting to be a different person. As you said, we might lose friends and family over some of these changes. How do we deal with that fear?
Oh my goodness. I know that fear so well. It can be paralyzing. I am not sure that there is any real answer on how to deal with it than to allow yourself to feel it. I had a counselor tell me once, I had spent my whole life, this is making me emotional. That probably means it's supposed to hit somebody out there, but I had spent my whole life just trying not to fall apart. And she was like, God bless her, I love her. She's like, Emily, I think you just need to let this get messy. Just let yourself unravel. I think that until you can allow yourself to realize this is where I am, I think you will always resist what needs to change. And then they say, if you like what you resist persists. I don't know that the fear ever goes away. I think you just get better at becoming like resilient and developing a skill set to like self-soothe and cope with it. Because I would be lying if I told you I figured it out. I figured it out in that arena. And then what happens down the line? Like you lose a job, people experience divorce, loss is loss. You grieve the love of a loss when you get into places where you lose yourself again, or the floor like is pulled out from under you. And I think this is why, depending on the severity, and I think we all know a little bit like how deep we are in these feelings of like numbness and sadness. The longer it goes on, it just really turns into something greater than ourselves. And that's when I would say that like recruiting help is the only way that I actually can move through things I don't love sitting in. And my slogan this year is you've got to name it to tame it. I'm trying to embrace the fact of thank God I know what it is. If it's here, if I'm experiencing emotion about it, this is a beautiful thing. This is the way that we were meant to live. It's supposed to show us what needs to change and to move in a different direction. And then maybe looking at it that way is not so scary, but it is, our bodies are designed to keep us safe, right? It is surely going to feel very heavy at times. But I have learned that even in the saddest and darkest of moments, you will always experience like bits of peace throughout that day. It doesn't last all day, right? Like maybe like 4 hours I've been sitting in some like heavy stuff. And then all of a sudden, like my kid will come and give me a hug and my body regulates again. And I experience just like that grounding. That's one of the reasons I love to work out. I've come to experience that through movement. I've also joined like a Pilates community. I've been through the last few years. Just knowing little things here and there, showing up to that class makes me feel better, makes me connected to humanity and the parts of it that I love. And other people are trying to, and you're not alone. Hopefully that answers your question. I get long-winded.
Yeah, thank you for your honesty and for sharing that. And I think it's supposed to make us emotional because it means that we are working through things. We are being ourselves authentically with all the emotions that come with it. So hopefully for our listeners, this is also a point where they can reach inside themselves and go, all these things that I'm feeling, it's completely valid and part of the human experience and part of what we are going through. So thank you for that. I also want to offer to our listeners, if they have felt a connection, if they felt alignment, if they are hearing what you are saying and going, wow, this is me, or this is someone I know, how can they get in touch with you to work with you? And what kind of levels or programs or offers do you have available for people who would like to work with you?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to get information about me is my website, www.betterthanemily.com. You can find out about me, also the book I wrote, or you can just get in contact with me that way. There's also a link to join our free community for those people who are like, I'm not sure if I want to speak directly to somebody yet. You can just see what we're doing and just see what we're about and find a space, if you don't even know where to get started, of like-minded women who are just all walks of life, all ages, trying to do the same thing one day at a time. You can also find me on Instagram at Emily Mitchell HTX. And I also have a podcast, Confident Bombshells, that's got a lot of episodes all the way from origin story to now. So there's multiple avenues in which we can connect.
Wonderful. And do you offer any opportunities for people to work with you in a group setting or a one-on-one setting, or how does that work with what you're doing with your coaching?
Yes, absolutely. So we have both. We have group and one-to-one. We have a couple coaches on our team. I am actually the only one who leads group right now, so that's fun. We have an offering coming out, should be right before the holidays. And that looks like it's about 12 weeks. We operate on an app. We give you workouts. We give you nutrition. There's a community call every other week. You will be on a chat full of women in the same group. And then I will be monitoring your nutrition and your fitness. That's at $2,000 for 12 weeks. And then the one-to-one coaching is super intimate. You'll be working with who the best fit is on the team for your personality. We'll do a strategy call and go through all of that with you. And that is a little more customizable nutrition, customizable fitness. You'll work with our strength trainer, Tony, directly. Still the same weekly calls. You'll be part of our community. We've got a plethora of backdated calls, like any topic, you name it. That's $3,000 for 16 weeks.
Amazing. I feel like these are some wonderful resources for our listeners to connect with. And this journey can be life-changing, and we can definitely and absolutely lose ourselves in the process. Reach out to this community, find your people, find someone who will support you through this. People like Emily who have been through this journey, and you can actually connect and relate to her experience as well. I find that this is going to be, I think, one of the most important things that people can do for themselves is, even if they have a supportive family, as you said, or supportive friends, they may not be the people that you want to connect with in this journey. You may need some other help and support as you're moving forward and as you're changing and becoming a new person. Thank you for sharing all of that. I truly appreciate it. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Emily's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to pop over there. You can have a look. You can connect on the socials. You can check out the podcast from any of your favorite podcast providers. Confident Bombshells is Emily's podcast. And I am sure that you're going to find a wealth of resources to support you if you're looking for just some loving and gentle support on this difficult journey that is often motherhood, menopause, or any of these other challenges that we get to go through as women.
Absolutely. You are not alone.
Thank you so much, Emily. I truly appreciate you being here today, taking the time, choosing me as your first podcast host. I absolutely love it. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your journey. I'm really hoping that this will inspire a lot of other women on this podcast to reach out and also get some help in their journeys. Thank you again, Emily. Thanks for being here. Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Take really great care of yourself.
You too.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.